Mr. Secretary, I want to stop you there, and I want to know, if you've got this great plan, why will you not let the media in?
Martha, it is not only privacy concerns. Let me be clear, we're in the midst of a pandemic.
Well, that's why you see, Martha, so many of the administration officials, including Mayorkas, as well as Roberta Jacobson, the Southern Border Coordinator for the White House, they're starting to change their tune. They're starting to say, we're not just saying don't come, we're saying don't come like this ever.
We walked into Juarez, Mexico, a city racked with violence, to find Ophelia and her 10-year-old son.
Él prometió que sí pasaba así con menores.
Biden promised that we can cross with minors.
She said she heard that because of President Biden, she would be welcome.
I wanted to yield to my vice president, who's smarter than I am.
Well, there's not much to add to that, Mr. President.
I was just sorry.
What an odd little week we've had. So, where to begin? The media this weekend, today, right now, is Sunday for most of you, Monday for some of you. The media has been just beating the hell out of the administration. This is the network media as well. Here and there's some pundits who still try to kick it back to Trump, but they don't. Two things that the media has made this is personal now, because the Biden administration not only has the messaging been all over the place, and the networks and the cable stations, they want Biden to be doing well, but they're on record a couple of years ago documenting the humanitarian crisis on the border, and so they look foolish. And now the administration is freezing them out, and so they've been activists for this administration. They've put the time in, and they feel like they've been betrayed. So they are angry as hell, and they are finding more and more immigrants. Even though they can't get to the facilities, but they're finding and speaking to more and more of these immigrants who are saying, "Yeah, we're only here because Joe Biden said to come here."
Would you have tried to do this when Donald Trump was president?
Definitely not. Definitely. We had the chance, We used to watch the news, and I definitely won't do this.
So did you come here because Joe Biden was elected president?
Basically.
In the open, you heard the another woman who's with a child.
We walked into Juarez, Mexico, a city racked with violence, to find Ophelia and her 10-year-old son, now headed back to Guatemala after being sent back to Mexico. The reason she risked everything?
Él prometió que sí pasaba así con menores.
Biden promised that we can cross with minors.
She said she heard that because of President Biden, she would be welcome.
Ouch. They don't want to do it, but they are beating the hell.
Yeah, that's not the story that the Biden administration wants right now.
Well, yeah, and that's not the story that most of these people in the media want to be telling, but they have to. This is undeniable. You can't pretend everything's fine and have FEMA opening up massive shelters for these minors.
I think they're up to 15,000.
Yeah,
kids
and this is
being held at the border right
this
now.
is Biden specifically said that people need to rush the border, need to swarm, or what did he say? Surge at the border. Well, he was running, and people listened. And Democrats run on this all the time. They always encourage this. They certainly encouraged it during Trump as well, as much as they could, so they could get the optics of security forces pushing back women and children on the border so they could reinforce the old, you guys could all finish this sentence for me. The old narrative that Trump is Hitler. It's the same. I'm almost bored talking about it. Alice and I were talking earlier today. Like, we're sick of talking about cancel culture, but it just doesn't stop happening, and we have to. But
I was like, are we going to have another Biden's border crisis and cancel culture show today? Do we have to?
Yeah, and we'll talk about other stuff too. We will, I swear, because I can't do border A to Z. But there's, I was trying to grab media, as much interesting sound as possible out there from what's happening today on the Sunday shows. Everybody is giving the Biden administration the same beating. So a lot of the stuff is just redundant. I can't use a lot of it. I mean, there's one other tiny deal where Tom Cotton is showing that he's a he's a hypocrite on giving prisoners money or something in the stimulus. That's not on. It's not at the front of top of mind issue right now. It doesn't matter. I'm sure that he is being hypocritical. I don't care at the moment. But this stuff in the border it's telling for several reasons. One, the decision making that went in to immediately, so self-assuredly, just wipe away the Trump policy without putting in any precautions, any measures to make sure that this doesn't happen. That's remarkable. That is a remarkable model of incompetence. And these are supposed to be very smart people. Remember, they know how to do Washington stuff. They've got their presidential, and they've got the right temper and tone and all that stuff. So it's also, so that's not only that, but the messaging and having this guy Mayorkas go out there and essentially, solicit for more undocumented minors coming and more illegal immigrants to come to the border implicitly, if not explicitly. It's just crazy. It's mixed messaging because they're trying to be too cute. They're trying to be sensitive to the fringe part of the party and the 2021, woke quota that they've instilled. And so they've diluted the messaging and destroyed the messaging, and they're falling all over themselves now. And it's no good because it's bad news. To hear Jen Psaki say, it's really tough. It's a tough thing to do. Yeah, no kidding. So maybe while you were piling on a few years ago, you could have thought of an alternative way to take care of the situation. But listen, this is just how bad it is. This is Chris Wallace with Alejandro Mayorkas from DHS just this morning.
Mr. Secretary, why not let reporters go to see what the conditions are at the camp in Midland? And is it true that more than 10% of the minors in Midland have tested positive, and in fact that more than 200 migrants in Brownsville tested positive for COVID and then were released?
Chris, the minors who are arriving and who are placed in the Department of Health and Human Services facilities are tested. They are all tested.
Answer the question.
Isolated and quarantined. Our COVID-19 protocols that are administered by the Department of Health and Human Services are operated very efficiently. We also, I should say, work very closely with local officials in Texas, with local organizations to also test, isolate, and quarantine children. And we offer reimbursement 100% from FEMA. And I
dodged the question totally. Never answered the question.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Secretary, why not let reporters go to see what the conditions are at the camp in Midland? And is it true that more than 10% of the minors in Midland have tested positive, and in fact that more than 200 migrants in Brownsville tested positive for COVID and then were released?
Hundreds of minors being tested positive for COVID on the border and then released. And now if they're in Texas and they're released, I assume they're released in Texas.
Yeah, some of them. Some of them they've flown up closer to Canada.
This is a different version of catch and release. Bringing closer, and this guy won't answer. Mm-hmm. The DHS secretary will not answer that question. You know why he won't answer it?
Because it's true.
Because it's true, and it's probably worse. The truth is probably worse. There's no doubt you got Border Patrol and ICE people leaking to Fox News and anybody who will listen left and right.
Well, especially because they stopped doing the COVID protocols because they were out of space. So imagine if Trump were president and they had stopped doing COVID capacity to make sure that people were distanced and they had an outbreak and 10% of the people were COVID positive in Trump border facilities, people would be having a field day. But because it's Biden, they just are quietly, turning off the COVID restrictions and packing all the people in there. The camps are at like 700% capacity. It's ridiculous. And I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know what options they have at this point, because now they've already made the narrative that they're the anti-kids in cages presidency and, come on up for weeks now. I don't see how you can unring that bell of telling everybody in Central America to come on up here.
It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And Martha Raddatz is for ABC. She is on a tear.
Morning, Mr. Secretary. I want to start right there. We heard the sheriff say it, the governor say it, and the migrants I spoke to say it. They are coming across because they believe they will be welcomed under the Biden administration. You said yourself 3 weeks ago, we're not saying don't come, we're saying don't come now. President Biden had a stronger message later, but the messages are mixed at best, Mr. Secretary.
Martha, good morning. The message is quite clear. Do not come.
Today's
the border
update
is closed. The border is secure. We are expelling families. We are expelling single adults under these.
How cold? What a cold, uncaring administration.
We've come a long way from they make the perilous
They climbed
journey.
the ladder and pulled the ladder up behind them. Incredible. Incredible. The fact that they have now got this talking point, which is 180 degrees different, just show you the massive hubris of this administration that they got when they got in here. And this is just one area right now that we're talking about. This is these fleet of executive orders that Biden signed at the very beginning of his administration. Those are also going to have very bad consequences, including certainly the Keystone Pipeline stuff. So that's about thousands of workers. But stay tuned to these executive orders, and especially once these climate idiots start getting a little more aggressive.
CDC's authority under Title 42 of the United States Code, because we are in the midst of a pandemic, and that is a
Title 42 is back.
Public health.
Whoa, what is that?
Imperative.
Oh, hold on, Chuck. Chuck Todd is talking. My cut sheet here says, my cut sheet, might as well say cut sheet, says cuck Todd.
We are encouraging children not to come. Now is not the time to come. Do not come.
You've only got 28,000 of them now.
It's dangerous. We are building safe, orderly, and humane ways to address the needs of vulnerable children.
Yeah, good luck with that. It doesn't matter. They don't. It is too little, too late. Cuck Todd, as my
good one, honey.
Says. It was not on purpose, but
sure.
He's not having it either. He's getting attacked on social media for saying this, for giving this monologue.
And a good Sunday morning. It's fair to call the deteriorating situation at the U.S.-Mexican border a crisis, even if the Biden administration refuses to use that word. But it's more than that. It's a political crisis for the new president with no easy way out. Republicans are quick to blame Mr. Biden for the growing number of migrants crossing the southern border, saying it's his rhetoric and policy shifts that caused this surge in migrants.
Chuck, I think that would go without saying.
Yeah.
Republicans, it's not really a story about Republicans being quick to blame. It is Joe Biden's own language soliciting, inviting, and encouraging this.
The new Democratic administration says it was left with a dismantled and unworkable immigration system by former President Trump. Look, conservatives want nothing less than a big wall and some stricter enforcement of the border. Progressives want nothing less than humane treatment for migrants fleeing violence, wherever it is, and a path to citizenship for those that are already here. So far, Americans largely approve of Mr. Biden's young presidency, and he wants to focus on vaccinations, COVID relief, infrastructure, voting rights, racial inequalities, and renewing America's image at home and abroad. But he can't control the news cycle. Just last week, an intelligence report reminded us of the threat from domestic terror groups that Mr. Biden must confront, particularly after January 6th. Events and politics have a way of applying their own pressure points, and right now, that pressure is pointed directly at our southern border.
The social media world is very angry at Chuck Todd.
I bet.
Folks on the left are not pleased, and this must be pretty tough to say that this administration is it's correcting civility, incompetence in Washington, and having them step in it in February, and now we're in March. It's like, ooh, dang.
And gangsters and corruption. The pressure is tremendous, and to do that 180 without really any preparation He owns this now. He owns it.
And Laura, he really does. And should they have been more aware? I mean, they really seem tone deaf to the politics of this as well. You heard Mayorkas trying to do cleanup, I think, there, trying to send this strong message. But is it too late?
Well, that's why you see, Martha, so many of the administration officials, including Mayorkas, as well as Roberta Jacobson, the Southern Border Coordinator for the White House, they're starting to change their tune. They're starting to say, we're not just saying don't come, we're saying don't come like this ever and come in the legal fashion. But
we're going to build a wall. Mexico's going to pay for it.
Again, there's such a big influx. And I was just talking to local advocates here in El Paso yesterday, and they were saying that they feel as though beyond the rollback of the Remain in Mexico, which they felt as though went well, according to the advocates and activists. Beyond that, they feel as though the White House doesn't have a plan in terms of how to address not just the children, but also the adults and the families that are coming over here. And that when migrants are being released into South Texas or when they're being transferred here to El Paso, that there isn't enough testing, COVID testing for them, that they aren't sure where they're supposed to go. And so they really, as Matt said, they do feel like it's a not sustainable situation here.
And it is not.
Well, right. I mean, it's an interesting point that now I forget in which cut it was. One of the people made saying, like, they just rolled back all Trump's executive orders without having the immigration system that they wanted set up. And that so then for them to complain that Trump had dismantled, quote unquote, a system that he had not needed because he had executive orders in place that prevented him from needing that type of system set up to process all these migrants, right? He didn't need to process all the people because he wasn't letting them come here. So to let them come here before you have the system set up to process them is a problem. That was a bad decision, you know, and Biden owns this now. You know, you don't get to pick what crisis you get to handle as president. You have to deal with all of them.
Yes, and this is Ron Klain, you know, driving this ship really, and they had decided that they ran on Biden being a return to normalcy, a return to decency, and Biden is the anti-Trump. That was what they ran on, and when he got into the White House, they said that's going to be our policy going forward. We're going to do all the gesturing to show that we're not Trump. We're not mean Trump anymore. We're good Joe. And that means dismantle the high-profile Trump things that the media was pointing out. The media lived off of, the stuff that seemed to resonate with the American public. So they went in there, and to be the anti-Trump, they went in there and immediately dismantled Trump's stuff. And they assumed that the headlines would be, and for the first few days they were, that decency was back and empathy was back at the border. But unfortunately, there's no Trump around now, so the media has to pay attention while all this stuff's falling apart. So this news coverage right now was supposed to be good news coverage for the Biden team, but no one did the damn work to make it happen, to make sure that the policies, you know, were undergirded with the effective replacements. And or changes. So now it's a total mess. It reminds me of the Obamacare website, where somehow nobody made sure that it worked. And as a matter of fact, many people knew going into the day they were going to launch it that it wasn't working. But everybody was hoping that somebody else was making sure, was guaranteeing, or just, you know, was there to make sure that it would be functional. But nobody did. And that is what's the word I'm thinking of? Organizational incompetence.
Right.
No checks and balances, no good communication, only wanting to get a good attaboy at meetings rather than, you know, say, hey, before we do this, I know we're all feeling good about sticking it to Trump's policy here, and flaunting, you know, how noble we are. Maybe we should make sure, we should delay maybe, and just make sure that we don't F this thing up badly.
Right. It's like the Fire Festival thing all over again, right?
Yes.
And when you watch that documentary about the Fire Festival, I think everybody has that feeling of like not having studied for the test and going into it and knowing that it's going to be bad and not not being able to do anything about it. That sort of organizational sense of everybody knows it's going to be bad. And I'm sure the Obamacare website was the same thing. But this is the same. It's like they just took down all the Trump stuff and nobody stood up to say, but wait, what are we going to do when people do show up at the border? We don't have an infrastructure built out to do anything about this. People are just going to show up here and we don't have enough people here to handle it. And it goes back to also, being nice isn't a public policy. Public policies have trade-offs. You have to make decisions, and people react to the things that you do and change their behavior on the basis of your policies, and you can't control that. You can say all day, we're going to have a nice border and it's going to be great, but if you don't have the infrastructure built in order to handle it when people show up and just try and walk through your border, then it's going to be a failure. And no matter how nice you are, well-intentioned you are, no matter how much Obama was a nice person who wanted the Obamacare website to work, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. People are going to do what they're going to do.
Well, and I think it's more insidious than nice, because we've been playing since January, Biden introducing his cabinet and leadership staff, and each of them begins their welcoming statement with themes of social justice as priority. So this guy, Mayorkas, he's not... Mayorkas, he's a social justice guy.
Right.
He's got that running through him. So he's not going to be able to separate himself, take a clinical look and with a clinical dissection of what's going on. He's a true believer in social justice. So, I mean, you heard him speak. You heard him say, he couldn't bring himself to say until today, where his job has got to be on the line.
Right.
You heard him enticing people to come in. Not using the term illegal immigrant at all. That was important. It's more important that we don't use that term than we make sure that the apparatus at the border is effective. That's the priority of people in the social justice movement. And they're riddled throughout this administration because the administration is afraid that they're going to get bullied from the left.
And...
and what did it get them? It's going to get them more bullied from the left.
Right. It's going to get them more bullied from the left. And people, at this point, even if the wave of people coming here slows down, it's not going to slow down for a while because people have already left their homes in Guatemala and in Honduras and are heading here. It's going to take a while to slow down, even if this does slow people down, which it might not, because I think they've been hearing Biden the whole time with a wink and a nod saying, don't come. But, if you do. So the idea now that they're going to start believing the Biden administration when they say don't come is, it just might be a tough sell for them. But I don't, it's the same thing with the socialism thing, how liberals always think that socialism is going to work the next time it's tried. But it's like they just can't believe that good intentions could go wrong somewhere. If we have good intentions and we're nice, it's going to work. It just has to, They believe that, and they can't understand why sometimes mean Trump could end up having a border policy that is, in effect, less cruel to people coming here.
Right.
Because it doesn't sell them a bill of goods, because Trump's honest and says you're not going to get in here.
Right. And they've also, the accessories for border security and for proper processing at the border have all been vilified and turned into objects of ire. The wall, the big steel rusty wall, that's supposed to evoke negative feelings. That's mean. That's bad. ICE is supposed to be abolished. These guys are jackboots. Border Patrol people, also jackboots. All the people down there. These are not forces for good. They have poisoned the well here.
Yeah, so I remember, it's funny, right after Trump's election in 2016, our kids started to hear about it at school because they were telling them, like, if you don't feel safe because Trump was elected, et cetera, et cetera. So it was like a conversation. I believe our daughter was in first grade kindergarten, actually, at that time. So she was talking to her friends about it, and she came to me and asked about, who we voted for and if we liked Trump, and she kind of thought about it a bit. And then she said, well, my friend said that he wants to build a wall. And I kind of said, so what's wrong with walls, you know? And she said, well, I don't know. I guess my friend that told me about it, maybe she wanted to go to the place where he's building the wall, and now she can't. So she didn't know why she wasn't supposed to like a wall, but her friend had told her there was a wall and it was mean, and she didn't have the pieces put together of what was mean about the wall, but something was bad about it.
Yeah, this is a bad situation. And those guys took a beating today.
Mr. Secretary, I want to stop you there, and I want to know, if you've got this great plan, why will you not let the media in? I understand privacy concerns, but will you let them in today or this week?
Martha, it is not only privacy concerns. Let me be clear, we're in the midst of a pandemic. We're talking about a crowded border patrol.
Oh, that's rich at this point to be going with that.
Patrol station where we are focused on operations. At the same time, and let me assure you that we are working on a plan to provide access so that people could see what is going on in a border patrol station. And I would encourage people to also see a Department of Health and Human Services facility where the children are sheltered and where they belong.
Yeah, they want to see them. That's the question.
And where we are moving them to.
What?
You should really see them. They're
yes.
great.
Why won't you let us see them? Oh, you really should. We would ask you to see them if possible.
They're fabulous. You'll love them.
You talked about the Trump administration and what was in place there. You did away with that. Wouldn't it have been better to have a plan before you did away with that?
Gulp.
We are executing the plan that we have, and let me share with you.
No. Don't need to move along from that. We are executing the plan that you have. Well, do we think it's working?
Because we will succeed. And when we look back at this time, however difficult it has been, we will get through it, and we will get through it successfully.
You're not the one not seeing daylight for 3 days in a row in the little box.
What we will all say is that we worked our way through a difficult time.
Why is he in front of us creating the post-narrative, PR line? We'll say after this is all, once we get the kids out of, unpiled off of each other, and once we try to contact trace all the COVID that we've released into Texas and the United States, once we find all their parents, if that's ever going to happen, once we do this monumental task, we will say that we did a great job here. We really worked hard. I love that he's writing a report card for the future, and he's giving himself an A. We did a good job in the future, you'll see, that we'll say about ourselves. Talk about a guy who does not give you confidence. It's this guy right here.
Administer the laws as they were intended, and we lived up to our values and our principles as a nation. And that is what we are accomplishing.
Yeah, okay. In President Shattuck's world, accomplishing, that word right there that he just said to Martha Raddatz, would be the last thing he said employed by the United States of America, and he would be fired immediately.
He ought to be. He's doing a terrible job trying to spin this. I mean, not that
no,
I don't know what.
You'll see that we will say one day that we came and saw a problem and went to the letter of the law and the spirit.
It's like there's always someone when something's going wrong that has to tell you, we'll look back on this someday and laugh. These are the good times. Don't you always just want to smack that person upside the head? You know what? We'll look back on this and laugh when you're in the middle of some terrible thing. It's just, why don't you focus on fixing the problem before you congratulate yourself on what a great job you're going to have done fixing the problem?
He's giving himself a Cuomo Emmy right now for the job well done. But, so what does it say that guy is the guy they put out there today to talk to everybody? This true believer, barking at the moon, he sounds more like a spiritual advisor than a project manager or a manager. Anson, hi, buddy. You leaving? Take it easy. Nice seeing you. Don't jostle the cameras too much. Thank you. So anyway, that is a total mess. I want to get to some of the cancel culture stuff in a moment, Alice, but a few pieces of housekeeping. One, What a beautiful day today was.
Today was fabulous.
We took a nice 5-mile or so walk in a great park in Newburyport, Massachusetts. So if you could get up there, you should go to it. It's called Maudsley Park. Is that right?
Maudsley State Park, yes.
What is that noise?
I don't know.
He's got a piece of electric equipment in a Maudsley State Park. It's beautiful. It's the wreckage, not the wreckage. What's it called?
It's like the ruins.
Ruins. Oh, I like how you say that. Say that again.
Ruins?
Ruins. It's the ruins of a couple of mansions built about 100 years ago, and it's just
it's like 450 acres of crazy woods and
sculpted trees and different things. It's really cool.
Gardens fallen into disrepair.
Yes.
It's very cool.
It's very cool. And then we had a great lunch at a great restaurant. If you're ever up in this area, go to, is it called 97 Pub or Pub 97?
Pub 97.
Pub 97 on Route 97. And that is that in Groveland or Georgetown?
Georgetown.
In Georgetown, Massachusetts.
I'm pretty sure.
It is a great place. They've got 97 different kinds of hamburgers, burgers, and the staff is just fantastic. It's a cool little place. I'm glad they've survived. And they did something really, really crazy. I don't know if we should tell them. Should we tell them?
We can
I'll just say this. I'll say this, that the owner or somebody monitored our kids. It was us and our neighbor and their kids, and essentially rewarded the kids for being well behaved. And for our kids, they were well behaved.
Yes.
For the Shaddocks, they were, considering that the little 3-year-old was an absolute jihadist terrorist about 3 days ago when we were in another restaurant. But Pub 97 is called. It is a great, great place. Great, real people are working the place. They're just they all know. They seem, if you have kids, you know that there are restaurants who get it, how it is to be out with little kids. Restaurants that don't get it. These people get it, and they were great, and the beer was good too. As a matter of fact, Fiddlehead beer, which was excellent. And so that is that. Anyway, it was just nice to get out there today in the sun. We've all got a little sun. I think we're all a little sunburned. And the exercise was great. Now, if you're listening to this on Monday, not Sunday, chances are that you may have, or maybe not, known that I'm making a change in my life. I have made, if it's Monday, a change in my life. One that I'm excited about. One that, is... I can't get into any backstory, but I'm professionally going to seek other alternate adventures, we'll say. And I think I'm excited. Alice is excited. And it will not affect this podcast because I am enjoying...
I have not fired him from the burn barrel yet.
Correct?
That's
or have not been fired?
not what he's referring to.
But so I know I hate to be vague, but just professionally, we're just doing some... I'm doing some new stuff. All
good things.
All good things, yes. I assume that I'll be on Jerry this week, Callahan. Yes, all good things. Anyway, so that's that. So I'm excited. I am glad this past year, for every human being on Earth probably, and certainly for you guys listening, and for us has just been, it puts a lot of things in perspective, and so we're prioritizing a little more carpe diem than in the past, perhaps. I think that's safe to say. Is that adequate, Alice, or should I?
Now that you've said a lot about something that nobody knows anything what you're talking about.
So there you go. I'll try to be even more vacuous and vague as we go on. So why is unfortunately, and I don't want to get in trouble here, but unfortunately, some of the best flags are also some of the most demonized flags, many for valid reasons. Although a flag is just a flag. It didn't do anything, but it was bared by some
Born.
bad...
A flag bearer bears a flag. The
Yes.
flag was born by
Very
them,
nice.
I would say.
Very nice. What was the one I got last night that you guys were all surprised at?
Oh, entropy. Tom came up with the word entropy.
Why was everybody so surprised? What do you think I do or did for a living? I'm around smart.
What are you, a physicist?
I'm around smart stuff.
Okay.
And my brother was actually surprised I knew what B2B was. Business to business. He's like, wow, B2B. What do you people think of me around here? Screw you. Okay, so the British flag, the Union Jack, which I love. We've got a Union Jack. I've had one that I bought in London in 1984 when I went as a child, and we've got this Grand Union flag.
Mm-hmm, that's the American flag,
right? With a little British thing in the middle. It's something that Yankee jerks get when they buy old houses, and I got one of those. So
it's sometimes thought to be the first, like the flag that George Washington flew when he was besieging Boston.
Well, Washington wasn't besieging Boston, was he?
Well, wasn't he when he came here and he was?
I guess with
when they brought the cannons for
right, but there wasn't a siege on.
Well, but they were here. He was set up here outside Boston. I mean, I don't think they were very effectively.
Too bad we never had a guest on to talk about this.
I don't think they were very effectively besieging Boston, but they were
traveled right through the Berkshires. Okay. So, Alice, why is the Union Jack in trouble?
So this guy was on, I guess, the BBC, and he was on a Zoom call into the BBC. I don't know if he's a politician or what. And he had a big old Union Jack next to a picture of the Queen.
Right, and he was. He's not an MP. Meeting. He was some kind of minister of something in England, and the presenters made a subtle issue of his flag.
Robert Jenrick, thank you. I think your flag is not up to standard size government interview measurements. I think it's just a little bit small, but that's your department, really.
That's tongue-in-cheek, I believe.
How British is that humor?
Tongue-in-cheek, I believe, because it's not all that small. It's a big flag.
It's a huge flag, right? It's a full-size.
The picture of the Queen. The picture.
You'll be aware that every time we've seen it every day, haven't we? It's a stock.
Always a flag
thing, isn't it?
Always a flag. They had the picture of the Queen there as well, though, in the Westminster office, I'm assuming.
Robert Jenrick, thank you.
So there you go. That's the problem with the.
Yeah, the BBC mocked him.
Okay,
for
they
having
mocked
a
the flag.
Union Jack.
But some people think that the flag deserves to be mocked because it is a flag. It is a tyrannical symbol.
Right. It is a symbol of colonization and butchery and genocide. And so many people on Twitter were saying, so the BBC presenters had to apologize that they made fun of the British flag. But then a lot of people on Twitter were saying they shouldn't have apologized, that flag makes people feel bad. It's a symbol of terror throughout the whole world. It's called the butcher's apron in much of the world because it's such a symbol of genocide. And they also said, some of the people on Twitter were saying that, they're not like those rubes over in the United States. They don't wave the flag around all the time. Only far-right fascists wave the British flag there. They don't run around waving the British flag, which seems odd to me because I feel like I see the British flag everywhere on British stuff.
Yeah.
And so that's news to me that they're not into their flag.
The British flag has also been embraced through pop culture historically by those who would be considered, anti-state folks at one time or another, or it's certainly rebellious, or certainly divergent from the Downing Street Buckingham Palace class. Like the Who used the British flag all the time. Many rock bands have used the British flag. It's a great flag.
Yeah, and it really is good looking.
But
it has the St. Andrew's cross built in.
Oh, is that what that is?
St. George's cross. So, like, the Scottish flag is the blue with the white X. That's St.
No,
Andrew's
the Scottish flag is a lion, isn't it? It's right there on that blanket.
Google Scottish flag. I think it's St. Andrew's cross,
I think it's a lion. Scottish flag. It's a standing up red lion
blue
with his paws.
with a white X. St. Andrew's cross.
Then what's that what's the red lion with the paws out that we have on a blanket?
I don't know.
What is... God, we gotta get our show prep together.
Jeez. That's the royal banner of Scotland.
Okay, there you go.
That's different. We do have a blanket of the royal banner of Scotland, but the modern day Scottish flag is the St. Andrew's cross. That's the blue with a white X on it. That's St. Andrew's cross because St. Andrew was crucified on a cross in the shape of an X, traditionally. And then they have the St. George's emblem, the red and white cross, up and down. St. George's, because St. George is the patron saint of England. Also my family patron saint, by the way. Great saint. And the patron saint of the guy at the Sunoco who does our inspection stickers, who's a Lebanese Christian.
I worked at a Sunoco
named George.
Worked at a Sunoco in the summer of '91, I think, right out of high school.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the worst job I'd ever had until a few years later. I worked making copies for a living, and that's the worst job. But the Sunoco I worked at, I had a tiny bit of girth on me, and all they had was bright yellow Sunoco T-shirts that we had to wear, and mine was like 6 sizes too small, so I looked like this big yellow sun. And with my fat hanging out in all different places where one would hope it wouldn't. And it was grotesque. And, of course, there I am in the Woburn Sunoco, not only having people from my town, Winchester, like all the, the mean girls pull in with their
nice cars.
Yes, with their nice cars because they're from the rich section.
Mm-hmm.
And, I have to, like, service their cars with my gas pumping, but my fat is bouncing around because my yellow shirt is painted on. It was a horrific and terrible situation. This is not a class thing. I could very well be doing it in the near future. So, it brings back bad memories. It was tough. Oh God. And I never knew if the oil was full. You can give full serve. There's people check the oil. I don't know what I'm looking at, but I take the thing out and wipe the thing out, and I still don't know what I'm looking at. So if your engine block seized after you went to the Sunoco because the the fat kid in the way too small shirt
George
said
at the
your oil was
Sunoco
fine.
in Newburyport does know what he's doing, and his patron saint is George, which is also the patron saint of England, and that's why the British flag looks like that.
So I would like to know your worst job that you've had. And making copies job was the company would make copies for law firms, so it's reams of contracts, thousands of copies. The problem with copies is that the time just moved so slow. And I would watch and making copies, and there's nothing else to do. They let us smoke in there. They're like, you can smoke, do whatever you want, because time doesn't move in here. So we're like, that job sucked. That took over for the gas station as the worst single job. You don't have that's back when most places were full serve. All right, now another thing I want to get to, Alice. Yes, Teen Vogue.
Right. So
we've had a
new developments.
Let's start from the beginning. Let's go a rough outline of what has happened.
So Alexi McCammond, who left Axios after it turned out she was dating a member of the Biden administration that she was covering, TJ Ducklow, she was announced as the new editor-in-chief of Teen Vogue, which has become incredibly woke in the Trump years. It was already kind of woke, but it became really, really woke in the last few years. And
it's really woke in an oddly pernicious way, too.
Right.
This is not like, how do I get Billy to have a crush on me? This is, not how to dazzle for senior prom.
This is like how Trump is gaslighting America.
Right, but it's also pushing sex, etc., onto, in all sorts of, inappropriate stuff, trying to push and encourage girls to do all sorts of things that would be considered, just risky behavior.
Right. Right. So they've become very woke. Alexi McCammond is very woke. She's not like a right-wing person or something. And so she was hired as their new editor-in-chief. And then immediately there was trouble in paradise because the staffers discovered that she had back 10 years ago in 2011 when she was in late high school, had tweeted some things like that once she woke up with puffy Asian eyes and tweeted that, and that was very offensive to Asian people in the current climate of violence against Asians, and after Trump called it the Chinese virus, and so that's very, very bad. And that's, she had in past years apologized for these tweets already, but they didn't feel it was enough. She apologized again. big companies like Ulta said they were going to pull their 7-figure ad campaigns from Teen Vogue because they were hiring a racist as their editor-in-chief. And eventually last week she did, in fact, resign before she even got a chance to start the job because it was, she was under fire. Her apology was not accepted for her 10-year-old tweets.
She fell on the sword just like every good woke person should. She admitted that she needed to see people and hear people and that she was guilty and that she had to put the work in. She said all the right things, but it didn't matter. The mob wanted red meat and they got it.
So after this victory, it came to light that senior Teen Vogue staffer Christine DeWitt, senior social media manager at the Condé Nast magazine, had earlier this month made public a letter by the staff complaining about McCammon's hiring. She wrote, "So proud of my Teen Vogue colleagues. The work continues."
The work. Jesus.
Just hours after McCammon announced her resignation, saying that her tweets as a 17-year-old have overshadowed her work since then, DeWitt wrote on Twitter, "Exhales the deepest sigh I've ever sighed." Yet DeWitt, who calls herself...
So DeWitt, happy to lead the mob and destroy this woman's career. 27-year-old who had gotten a good job, good wokester, but she had done something wrong 10 years ago, something that was tasteless 10 years ago, so she has to be destroyed. She's celebrating this because she obviously is pure of heart.
DeWitt, who calls herself a queer, fat Filipinx femme in Brooklyn, on her Instagram bio.
Sorry, I said the J word. Alice and I have a deal going on. Go ahead.
She still had up old posts of her own in which she repeatedly dropped the N-word.
Oops.
She at least twice referred to a friend who appears to be white as an N-word in 2009, and then next year also used the word N-word in a joke tweet. DeWitt is of mixed Irish and Filipino descent. I don't know why they said Filipino and not Filipinx, as she described herself.
Yeah, I'm uncomfortable with this.
A queer, fat Filipinx femme in Brooklyn. Her own magazine. And so this is somebody else writing about her. McCammon had apologized and deleted her own messages. The offending, and then neither DeWitt, McCammon, or Teen Vogue could be reached for comment.
So DeWitt has been found out, and she
made all her social media private now.
Right. So if she hasn't been deleted right now, she undoubtedly will be very soon, because she also was a human being and an a-hole and one brief nanosecond 10 years ago, or a few different
2009.
nanoseconds.
So that's 13 years ago.
Right. So nope.
12
by
years
the
ago.
rules
Sorry.
that DeWitt was happy to play by to get the satisfaction and the validation of having destroyed somebody's life and feeling good about it and wholesome about it, she now will be deleted by these rules. I am for this corporate woke cannibalism, and I hope that it sees itself to its natural ends, and that perhaps we can all get better after all this complete and utter horse bleep is over.
I never thought I would live in an era. I remember watching movies about the 50s and the blacklist era, when people would whisper that you were a communist, and all it took was somebody informing on you and saying, oh, they saw you at a rally or at some peace march and you were branded and your career was over or you were on the blacklist. People go to parties now and they don't want to talk. They're like, can I talk? I don't know your girlfriend. She might be woke. Really? I'm not making this up. People, this informant thing, it's not just what you do, it's what you don't report. That's another way the goalpost moved. I was reading about this guy, Winston Marshall, the banjo player in Mumford and Sons. Okay. I remember when they were a thing for about the time it took to take a piss. This guy tweeted out that he liked a book. It's a book called Unmasked. I never heard of it. You never heard of it. It's apparently not favorable to Antifa, so it's criticizing Antifa. Okay, people write books. He tweeted out, finally had the time to read your important book, You're a Brave Man, to the author. Now he has to step away Everyone's always stepping away from the band. Oh, my God. And this is his apology. Again, so Soviet. Over the past few days, I have come to better understand the pain caused by the book I endorsed. What? Yeah. Would you hit somebody over the head with it? I have offended not only a lot of people I don't know, but also those closest to me, including my bandmates. What a bunch of pussies they must be. And for that, I am truly sorry. It's so Stalin-esque. It's so, you know what?
Right,
how about I can read what I want? I'm a musician. Don't worry, it won't happen again.
Here, Bill Maher gets it exactly right again. Exactly right again. People need to freaking lighten the bleep up. Right. Lighten the bleep up. What do you want to spend the units of your life for, going and looking for things that supposedly can offend you, that then you can run to the crowd with and feel good about and try to destroy somebody's life? What satisfaction on your deathbed will you have to know that you were an absolute prick during your time on Earth and spent your time trifling, looking around and looking at snooting around at who might be, having a discord that you haven't approved of? And God, those people suck.
Yeah. I mean, I have no doubt that there are lots of podcasts out there and books out there and things going on, people having conversations that I would absolutely find offensive, that I would not like, that I would not enjoy, but I spend zero time thinking about them. I'm not interested. Right. I don't think about it. Do you think about what people might be saying somewhere on the...
No.
If they're saying something that might bother you on some podcast somewhere?
I wouldn't even know where to find the time.
It seems odd. So our Teen Vogue staffer wasn't the only person who had a rough weekend with their old tweets. Also on the San Francisco school board, there are some problems because the San Francisco school board, again, it's not as though they found a closeted Republican on the school board. These are all very woke, very liberal people. But, the AAPI, the Asian American and Pacific Islander community, has not always been the favored sons of the woke movement. So San Francisco school board member Allison Collins has found herself in trouble because she has in the past spent a lot of time on Twitter calling out the Asian American community for how they uphold white supremacy. Ooh. And so now she's finding that her old tweets maybe have gotten her in trouble. So this is from December of 2016. She writes, "Hey, Twitter, does anyone know of any news stories highlighting hate speech or bullying of Asian students? Please send them my way. I'm looking to combat anti-black racism in the Asian community at my daughter's mostly Asian American school." So she is white, Allison Collins, but she has a black daughter. She writes that many Asians won't engage in critical race combos unless they see how they are impacted by white supremacy. I grew up in a mostly Asian American school, and I know this experience all too well. Many Asian Americans believe they benefit from the model minority BS. In fact, many Asian Americans actively promote these myths. They use white supremacist thinking to assimilate and get ahead.
Ooh.
Talk to many parents and you will hear praise of tiger moms and disparagement of black and brown culture. I even see it in my Facebook timeline with former high school peers. Their timelines are full of white and Asian people. No recognition that Black Lives Matter exists. 2 weeks ago, my mixed-race black daughter heard boys teasing a Latino about Trump Mexicans and the KKK. The boys were Asian American. She spoke up when none of the other staff did. The after-school counselor was Asian. Sorry. And then she writes, "My best friend from school says she feels alone in the Chinese community. She feels ostracized when she speaks up against anti-black hate. Where are the vocal Asians speaking up against Trump? Don't Asian Americans know they're on his list as well?" And now here's where she really gets herself in trouble. "Do they think they won't be deported, profiled, beaten? Being a house N is still being a house N. You're still considered the help."
Yeah, sorry about that.
Allison Collins.
Yes, the cultural winds have changed a little bit, Allison. And in March of 2021, that ain't going to wash. So
there are repeated calls for her resignation. Yes. I assume by Monday she will no longer be on the San Francisco
There's
School
an opening
Board.
at Teen Vogue, Allison. Bon chance.
This has been another fun Burn Barrel. It's good to be back with you on this Sunday. You can talk to us on Twitter at Burn Barrel Pod, Facebook.com/Burn Barrel Podcast. You can find us on our YouTube channel, which is Tom Shattuck's Burn Barrel on YouTube. There you can see the video versions and comment, like the videos, subscribe there or wherever you like to listen to podcasts. You can also shoot us an email.
C'est La Vie.
That's burnbarrelpodcast@gmail.com.